Hi, everybody. How you all doing? This is Greg Study on Soccer. I am here with Johan Aarnio. It is so cool to get to talk with you, Johan. Welcome on board, and thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Greg. Pleasure to be here.
I'm going to get started with a short little intro of sponsorship, and then we'll get started. Greg Study on Soccer is sponsored by Auden Technologies. Auden Technologies will take care of everything from your security camera, alarm systems, all the way to servers and networks. Auden Technologies operates primarily out of the Midwest and the Northeast. You can contact them at infi, that's infillc.com, or you can send an email to jauden, Jauden, at infillc.com. Thank you very much to Auden Technologies for keeping us going and sponsoring our show. Okay, Johan Aarnio. Before we get into this, and what I would like to do, I was talking to you a few minutes ago, is sort of go through the story. I mean, how you got to the United States. Let's start from the beginning when we get going. But I just want to say that it was some years ago that you and I met for probably the only time we ever did meet, and we'll talk about that as we get to that part of the story. So, welcome. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you, Greg. Yes, I was born in Chile. My father was from Finland, it's from Finn. And four of us
Okay.
were born in South America. And then we traveled and lived in different parts of the world until we immigrated as a family and came to the U.S. And we ended up in the West Coast. So I graduated from Patrick Henry High School in San Diego and went to San Diego State and played at San
Right.
Diego State for George Logan, a Scottish
Wow.
coach that put a lot of enthusiasm into a lot of us who went on to coaching, the likes of Dean Wurzburger that went to Washington University. Um, Seamus McFadden went to USD and was coaching there for 30 years, I
Wow.
believe.
Yeah.
So, and we all got involved in that. So what happened was I graduated from San Diego State. I had broken my right leg and I wasn't going to continue playing or anything, and made my dad happy because I would go to work. And I was recruited from campus by IBM, and I went to IBM
Wow.
and I had a career there for about 3 years, tremendous career. Um, I had an older brother and who passed away in a car accident about a year
Mm,
apart. And at that time, I just I had an epiphany. I wanted to now go and do what I really wanted to do in life, and that was get into coaching. So I started to pursue a coaching career and went after all the licenses that you needed and just to study the game and so forth. And in our
right.
classes, I remember Ziggy Schmidt. He was in our A class. As it happens, I was one of the youngest A licensed coaches around. My number was 147 at
Okay.
the time, license number 147.
Wow.
And um, I had an invitation from Ron Newman to come and join a San Diego caravan that they had with the Sockers. And I was the only one that was a non-soccer
Huh.
there because I had that license. So we went out and did this caravan in coaching. And he asked me, what would you like to do? And, Julie B was doing dribbling and Martin Donnelly was doing tackling and things like that. And I said, look, give me tactics. So I did that. And when I was doing my session, I saw that Ron was watching. And so that's how we met. I had applied for a job in coaching one of the UCs up north. I believe it was UC Santa Clara. And um, I I didn't get the job, but Ron had been trying to reach me. And I said, Ron, he says, where you been? I says, well, I thought I was leaving and I haven't been around, and I did not
Wow.
leave. So he asked me to come and coach with San Diego and start with the reserve team. And so that's how we started the whole thing. Um, I coached the reserve team. There was a team called Banamex. We ran it out of Mexico, out of Tijuana. Banamex stands for um, Mexican Banks of Mexico.
Right.
And
Right.
we started to play, and we were winning with the reserve team and discovering talent. And as an example, Rene Ortiz, at the age of 15, we identified
Wow.
him through the Banamex program down in Tijuana.
Wow.
So a few years later, um, this reserve program was bringing in younger players. And I remember Rene came along with Paul Wright, both of them. Paul Wright
Wow.
was at Grossmont High School, and Rene was coming. And
Yep.
I said to them, I said, look, the idea was you come to San Diego, rub shoulders, and train with the pros
Wow.
in the AM, and we will offer you a scholarship to go to college and complete your education,
Oh boy.
and then play on the reserve team when we need you in the PMs and so forth. And so it grew, and it grew from there. Um, it came to a point where
Wow.
Ron had a first team assistant whose name was Brian Tyler, who had an accident in Europe and passed away. And
Mm.
then Ron asked me and elevated me to his assistant. Um, and that's how it all started.
So now, Johan, at that point in time, the San Diego Sockers were only playing outdoor soccer, weren't they?
Yes, yeah, they were playing outdoor soccer, 79, 80, and then they were involved in the NASL in the
Right.
first indoor, and I believe lost with a record of 6-12.
That's correct.
And
Yeah.
then the following year, when I got involved with him, with Ron, we basically, the best players in the country were NASL players, and we had a lot of them. So our championship our first championship was 81-82. That was
Right.
a tremendous championship. Um, and we had great players.
Tampa Bay Rowdy. Tampa Bay
Tampa
Rowdies,
Bay,
right?
Tampa Bay. And what's interesting is um, that, you had great players, and there were players that were being discovered around that time. And of
Yeah.
course, two of them, two very, very, because Ron in the summers would take off, and he would go to England, and he would let me do the summer stuff,
Wow.
and train players and do things like that. So I said to him one time, I said, listen, there's a player. I saw him in Los Angeles, and he's a very good, and he lefty player, very, very good. And then he saw him during that series play, and he asked me, who is that guy, Hugo Perez? I said, that's the player I've been telling you about. So Hugo was identified then. And the other one was, at that time, was Vidal Fernandez.
Because Hugo was playing on
Vi-
Tampa Bay.
Hugo was playing, yes. I said, that's the player.
Wow.
And so, at that point, it was integrated that, and as it happened, Hugo ended up coming to us. And the other one was Vidal Fernandez.
Right.
There were two great American players in that time, two of them, tremendous players. One was Ricky Davis, and the other one was Vidal Fernandez.
Yeah.
And everybody knew Ricky
Wow.
Davis. Not many knew Vidal Fernandez.
Right.
And I always thought, and
Right.
I used to talk with Ron about it, I said, Vidal is the best American midfielder in the country. The best out of the two. He's better. And he said, because he's so creative.
Wow.
And so we ended up getting Vidal and Hugo onto our team. And that's when, we were doing a little bit of both, indoor and outdoor. And then it
Right.
became, I think in 84, the NASL folded around 84. So we had an 81-82 NASL championship. We had another one in 82-83. And that was interesting because, we went, like you said, from the NASL to the MISL. The MISL had been playing indoor.
Right.
And there was this huge rivalry
Right.
between Ron and Kenny Cooper from Baltimore.
That's right.
Kenny played for Ron. Kenny had played for
Yeah.
Ron back in Dallas. and they would always
That's
tease
right.
each other. But Ron would be the bigger teaser, and he'd say to Kenny, your arms are too long. That they as a goalkeeper, they hang and they hit the ground, and Kenny would get upset. And but you know, Baltimore was the the highlight of the MISL at the time. There, one of them, anyways, and we
Right.
won that championship. So there was a lot of this digging going on between Ron and Kenny. But you're right, that was the indoor, the outdoor, back to the indoor, a little bit of both. Um, we
Yeah.
got to a lot of semi-final playoffs in outdoor, but never won it. And that outdoor team was a great
Right.
team, and those players came
Uh-huh.
to play indoor and were just turned out. I mean, they were just, Cassie Dana, you're talking about Gene
Yeah.
Woolrich, Julie V, Addie Coker,
Right.
um, Eric
Right.
Geyer. It was
Right.
just fantastic. So that took us
What an all.
to, yeah, that took us to 82, 83 in that MISL. I believe the 83, 84, we went back to the NASL and
Yep.
won that championship in the NSL in
Right.
83, 84. That was played in New York, and
Yeah. That was the
that was
Cosmos.
interesting. Exactly, that was the Cosmos. Eddie Fermani was the coach.
Right.
Uh,
Wow.
Very, very interesting year. Um, yeah, we were, I believe, in Chicago, and Ron said to me, "I'm going back. Tracy's in the hospital, his daughter. I'm
Uh-huh.
going back, and you're going to go and to the final and keep going with the team and win this game." I said, and that I is now. So now we would always dress up for our anytime we were in a playoff. Ron wanted us to be in tuxedos, so we
Yep.
were all in
Yep.
tuxedos, and
Yep.
that was we went to that final to play in the Meadowlands in New Jersey, and I said, okay, let's see how this goes, and then I said to the players, you know what to do. I said, I'm here to
Right.
help in any way I can. He says, but I trust you, and you trust yourselves,
Right.
so let's go. And
Wow.
Julie and Kazi stepped up and gave support. And
Wow.
I remember when the game started, we were down 2-0
Yeah.
in the first period. We were down 2-0. They Chico Borja scored a goal,
Yep.
and there was another player, Angelo Di Bernardo, scored.
Angela Deep.
They had good players, Terlecki,
Yeah.
Burridge
Sure
in
did.
goal, just tremendous players. And
Tremendous.
then Gene Woolrich steals the ball. We had a defensive power play. And the one thing that Ron had done is really turned a man advantage for the other team into a man disadvantage when we were down by a player, because he had
Mm.
tactically set things up, and he basically revolutionized this game,
Right.
innovative, so that when we would win possession of the ball, the idea was we always had two players up front on the top of the box defensively, that high rate of speed. Okay. So you had
Right.
a Gene Woolridge, you
Right.
had a Chacha Namdar that could do that. And then when we steal this ball, we're going to go and attack them because
Right.
they have power play, 5 players,
Right.
all offensive players, thinking that, oh,
Right.
we're going to score, we're not going to lose the
Right.
ball. And
Right.
then when they do turn over the ball, everybody thinks the other guy is going to be the defender because he's an offensive player. So
Wow.
mentally, they don't defend very well. So
Right.
we were turning this around into a situation that it gives us the man advantage, because they don't really think, oh, I got to
Right.
defend. I'm on a
Right.
power play. I'm supposed to score. So what happened was Gene Woolridge steals the ball, and Chacha Namdar and Gene scores the goal. Now it's 2-1. Okay. Um, right after that, it kept going, and we got another goal. and it was 2-2. I think we went into halftime 3-3. Yeah, we went into halftime 3-3. But it felt like, have you ever been in a game where it's a tie, but you're winning the game?
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Right. I know
So
what you
we
mean.
went into halftime, and I said that to the players. I said, "Look, we have a tie here, but we are winning this game, and we know it, and they know
Right.
it. So,
And they know it.
um, and they know it. So we just need to come out and do what we do best the second half to win
Nice.
this game." And
Nice.
so that 3-3 ended up. Oh yeah, Kevin Crowe had scored to make it go from 3-2 to 3-3, and then halftime came in, and Kevin Crowe, which was a draft pick for us from San Diego State, a whole story in itself on how that happened, because we there were two players from San Diego State that we needed to draft, and Ron said, what do you see out there? I said, well, we have Clay Coyman, which was
Right.
well known by a lot in the league,
Right.
and then we have
Right.
Kevin Crowe,
Right.
who is not known by the others in the league, but
Interesting.
as good or better a player, I
Right.
said to
Right.
Ron.
Wow.
So when I went to the draft that time, I think it was in Cleveland, Ron said, "You know what we're going to do?" I said, "Tell me what we're going to do." We're going to draft a better player second that is not known, and take the player that is known first, so that we have him. So we drafted Clay first, and Kevin was the second round pick,
Interesting.
and we had both of them. It turned out that Kevin ended up staying with us, and Clay ended up going other places, and Kevin had a
Right.
tremendous career
He sure
with us
did.
in San Diego. At any rate, coming out of that halftime, in that championship, Kevin scores a beautiful volley with the left foot, and now we're at 4-3, and there
Nice.
it happened 4-3. Kazi and Julie did their magic at some point, and Kazi gets a goal. So now the score is 5-3, and I believe Quinny finds Julie to make it
Right.
6-3, and then I think Chacha Namdar got a goal, one of his crappy goals. Chacha has a great story. Chacha, I'll tell you a story about Chacha next. But anyways, we win 7-3 in this championship. And I got on the phone with Ron, and he was just ecstatic. I said, everything is healthy back there, and he said everything is fine. Tracy's
Good.
doing well,
Good.
and it was just a tremendous championship, tremendous moment for the players, for everybody, and we won it away and came back home, and Bob Bell was there. He was the owner at the time.
Right.
But going back to Chacha, I want to tell you a story
Okay.
about Chacha. Chacha came to us. We had completed our tryouts. Our everything we had done was completed, and I get a phone call at the office, and I had a resume in front of me and a phone call, and it was Chacha. And I said, he had sent it. I dug it up. I said, Chacha, we're all done with everything here. He says, no, you have to look at me. You have to look at me. You have to see me. I said, well, where are you? He said, well, I'm in Phoenix. I'm not with the Phoenix Inferno anymore, but I'm in Phoenix.
Right.
And I said, well, Chacha, I don't know. I said, we start our serious practices tomorrow and everything, and we're all done and everything. Next morning, I went to the sports arena, and I pulled in. Chacha drove all night, and he was waiting
Oh,
he was waiting there and introduced himself. So he came on and started to play, and the rest was history. He ended up joining us and everything.
wow.
But that was the initiative that
That's
Chacha had. Yeah. And he
that's
showed that kind of
wow.
initiative. He showed that initiative in the games. He was not a top role player, but when he came in, he played as important as anybody in the team, and he certainly had a lot to do with those defensive power plays that we had. And
Oh, no kidding. Yeah.
yeah,
The no goal
yeah,
patrol.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That was it. Yeah, yeah.
And that championship in against the Cosmos, that was the last championship. That was the last season for the NASL indoors. The San Diego Sockers joined a couple of other teams, the Minnesota Strikers, I think the Chicago Sting, and moved over to the MISL the next season. And that next season was an interesting one too, because it was the 2 years earlier, and this has always been a fun time for me. 2 years earlier, the Sockers had beaten Baltimore in the championship of the MISL. When they went and played back in the NASL, the Baltimore Blast won the championship in the MISL. And then now we're back into the MISL and facing the Baltimore Blast as so the championship was two champions playing each other, and it had moved from a best of five. I think it was now a best of seven. And what an incredible time. And somewhere in there, Johan, and you may remember this. In fact, I imagine you probably will. There was an overlap between the NASL outdoor season and the MISL indoor season, to where the Sockers were playing a playoff game, I think, in the NASL, and the very next day they had to play a game in the MISL, or it was the other way around. But the indoor and outdoor seasons had overlapped, and so the players were going from the outdoor field to the indoor field within right back to back. That was incredible times.
It was difficult. It was difficult because you could have a player burnout, and so we really were not having some players in outdoor play in indoor. You know,
Right,
so we
right,
were as an example, Lawrence Hilks. He was an
right,
outdoor player, very good player. Um, um, Voltmar Gross, our goalkeeper. Um, you know, things like that. I mean, there were, and I think everybody felt that.
right,
But it was interesting, like you said, to go back and had one in the NASL, the indoor, and come back and one in the MISL after that.
yeah,
And from then on, we won another. Well, I was there anyways. We won another three championships in 84, 85, 86, and then 87. We skipped a year. We did six. Well, I
right,
was there 6 championships in 7 years. Um, but there were players that came and players that went
right,
during all those years. We had players and then goalkeepers, and things changed. You had Alan Mayer and Voltmar Gross that were not there anymore, and you had a Jim Gorsick come in with
right,
a Zoltan Toth, and a
right,
Zoli, and you
right,
had
right,
you had Martin Donnelly, and you had Julie V, and actually went away for a year, and Julie came
that's
back
right,
after a while, which was great. But we had an influx of new players. We had Steve
right,
Zungel, Branko Segura, Fernando Clavijo, and George Karakalidis that all came, and
right,
um, and we just kept winning and kept winning and winning. And I attribute that the change of players. They're all competent players. They're all very, very great players. But Ron was a
right.
common denominator, and
Yes,
and the
indeed.
the key that I've learned, um, at least in our situation in championships, is how to win championships. You need two things. You need competent players. It's
Mhm.
great to have the best, but a lot of times the best players don't win a championship. You need competent players,
Right,
players that can play and are competent and
right,
can play. And then you need a good system that fits those players and brings the best
right,
out of each one, because they're all different. And that
right.
means the chemistry. So Ron knew who to put in and with
Absolutely.
whom, and felt that rare harmony of blending talent. Um, Ron knew, Ron was an emotional guy when he needed to be, an intense coach when he needed to be, but he got the most out of all his players and how to deal with different players, which is
Right.
you're managing people. And he had his way of how to
Mhm.
do it. And a lot of times, um, players weren't happy about that because they saw a different handling of this versus that and a lack of his
Mm,
consistency. But Ron knew how
mm.
to allow his players to win for him, allow the players to express their talent when they needed
Yeah.
to make all of us successful. So he had that ability,
Right.
and that was very different to a lot of other coaches in the league at the time. They had their way or the highway, and they did things their way, and they were
Mm,
different, you know. Um, but in addition
yeah.
to having seen how Ron was innovative with the game and developed this game, and how he blended talent and how he handled different egos and massaged different players. You know, there's a saying that, you know, the Yugoslavs,
Mm,
they need to be massaged, and then they're talented. They were the Brazilians of Europe. They have all the skill, you know, and then the others that you need to handle this way and this. He could change hats a little bit, you know, and he did that, and
right.
um,
Right.
even at the expense of at times being disliked by for what he was doing by certain players. But he brought it all together. At the end, everybody
Sure.
if was together
Right.
for a common cause, and so he just kept winning, and
And right. And that common cause was pretty outstanding. I mean, winning 5 championships in a row. The last one of those five was in Milwaukee, Minnesota, rather, the Minnesota Strikers, and that takes me to the story that you and I met. And I doubt you remember, but it was after the game 6 in Minnesota, and Ron Newman asked me to invited me to come to dinner with you and Randy Hahn and Ron Newman and myself, and it was just the four of us at the table. And as a fan at the time, I mean, we're all pretty much the same age. And at the time, as a fan, it was pretty exciting just to hang out with you guys. And it was funny because one of the questions that Ron asked me, he said, and this just blew my mind. He goes, "Well, Greg, what do you think we should do in the next game?" And I mean, it was really cool because he's, bringing me into the conversation and, allowing me to be a part of the conversation. It was pretty fun. But yeah, and then defeating, and that was an incredible series too. I remember, Johan, that series because that series was when the Sockers were down 3 games to 1 in a best-of-7 championship, and that was just an outstanding turn of events. But the thing is that the next season was the season that the Dallas Sidekicks won the championship, and San Diego was eliminated by the Tacoma Stars in the semifinals. Can you talk a little bit about that season and that series?
I think there were a lot of distractions. We had won
The
5
the
in a row. Can you hear me? Okay, we had won 5 in a row. Um, you know, that
Right.
was at the time.
Yes.
At the time, I was hearing that, okay, this is a record which is in the Guinness record, because the Bulls had not, Chicago Bulls had not done their thing yet. So they hadn't won
Oh.
5. Nobody had won 5 in American professional sports. And the only one that had won 5 had been the Boston Celtics, who had done it over 10 years. And it was great. It was one for the thumb. We won. And
Right. Yeah.
um, then there was changes going on, um, in the administration at the front office, regarding ownership, regarding the franchise, regarding is it going to be around, not be around.
Mm.
I don't remember what we went. I think we went 25 and 23 or 23-25 that season. Um, Um, it was not. There were a lot of distractions, and distractions take effect. I think we came
Definitely.
back after that in 87, 88, if I'm not mistaken, and won
Yes.
that championship, in 87, 88. Um,
Yep.
yeah, I think we were in 86, 87, 27, 25. And there was a lot of
Correct. That's correct.
distraction. I don't think Bob Bell was involved anymore, our owner. There was new ownership. There was a bankruptcy. The players had to deal with a lot, and there was a lot going on, and it took its toll.
Mm.
It took its toll. But having said that, um, the following year we did win, which was good. You
And
know,
and and that win-loss record that season, that was I think your last season with the Sockers,
yeah,
was 42-14. How incredible! What a record! 42-14. Just amazing.
right, right,
Gosh.
yeah,
And
yeah.
that was and that was against the Cleveland Force. And not only did see that's the other thing. Not only did you guys go 42-14 during the regular season, but you go into the championship series against the Cleveland Force and shut them out. Four straight. Just I
Yeah,
mean, just dominate the field. Just what a season.
yeah, yeah. Well, we had a very, very capable players. I think there was one time I remember when I was had gone and moved on and took the head coaching job in Milwaukee. One of the players from
Right.
Chicago, um, there was a couple of them, but they had played in the NASL in their time. Tremendous players. Like I said, the NSL had players. This was Potamar Headache. Okay, what a great
Oh, I
player.
remember him. Yeah. Yep.
And he coached in Chicago as well and played. And Mirko Castillo, another one, tremendous player.
Wow.
Um, and when we would chat and talk, they said there was something about the teams coming in to San Diego to play that, especially in the earlier years, they started to catch up later and became a little more, was more difficult. But especially in the
Right.
early years, it was they almost felt defeated prior to the game beginning, for the ball being
Mm,
moved, and so it was a difficult place to play in
right.
San Diego, especially when we had a
Right.
sellout. Everybody's doing well, and it was the expectations.
No
So,
kidding.
credit to other teams coming in and struggling with that. That was part of it. That was part of that dynasty that almost caused that fear.
Yeah.
Um, but after that, I um, I went to Milwaukee. I believe it was in 1990,
Right.
and I took um, I took several younger players that we had with me. I brought him into Milwaukee to help us,
Okay.
and one of them was Rene Ortiz. Another one was Arturo Velasco, very,
Wow.
very good defender. Had come in
Wow.
through the
Wow.
system and played for the Nomads for Derek Armstrong for many years there in San Diego.
Yes.
Um, Felipe
Sure.
Hernandez, the goalkeeper, came in. Um, there were some other players that. Oh, important one. In my second year there at Milwaukee, I brought in Cacho Cordova,
Oh,
and
I remember
Cacho,
Concho.
yeah. So Cacho had come to us originally in the early '80s. He was the captain of Boca Juniors. He
Okay.
was in
Wow.
Boca Juniors. Yeah, he was the captain of
Wow.
Boca Juniors, and he played with Ruggeri. And
Wow.
Maradona was 15 years old when and when at the time when he came and ended up playing with Cacho. And then Cacho came here, I believe, in '82. And when I said to Cacho, look, when I go to Milwaukee, you come and be my player, but I also want you to be assistant coach. And he was. He came over,
Ooh.
brought his family.
Oh, outstanding.
Yeah, and I
Wow.
believe he's still there. his family is there. And I believe he's still there, resides in Milwaukee. A lot of players that come to Milwaukee really love it. And it's a good
Yeah.
place to raise a family, and they stay
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And so he might have moved and come back. But the last time I spoke to Cacho was about a year ago. And because every Christmas he's sending out information, hello, how are you, and all that. And he was still in Milwaukee. But that was and Milwaukee had a great group, a nucleus of players too. Um, and the situation in Milwaukee are the injuries. An indoor can do players. Indoor you get more injuries, knee injuries and things like that because
Right.
of the floor and the
Right.
tightness of space
Right.
than outdoor really. And
Right.
we had so many injuries. I think 7 knee issues out of 14 players we had. Um, but it was what it was. Um, the I
So
tried to
you were
get
there.
Julie to come to Milwaukee.
Did you?
I tried to get Julie to come to Milwaukee, and he led me on, but he didn't come.
Ah,
Um, yeah,
dang.
and Wad Hermes. I tried to get Wad Hermes to
In-
come to Milwaukee, and
Interesting. I
as
always like
well.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because we had been going through so many injuries that it was just difficult.
And that was a
And
different league, Johan. The Sockers had, at that point, they were playing consistently in the major indoor soccer league, and now you went to Milwaukee, and they had been playing. That team had been part of the AISA league, but when you showed up, they began starting to play in the NPSL. Talk a little bit about the was there any significant difference between the two rules or styles of play or anything like that?
I think as time went on, the game got better. The players were better. Um, the NPSL, Steve Paxos was the commissioner of the NPSL. He ran it like a tight ship, and Milwaukee was a flagship franchise at that time. That's
Right.
why when Paxos said to me, "You come to Milwaukee from San Diego," I said yes because that was a flagship group, and they had a very good ownership. You always have to look at ownership.
Yeah.
Ron used to tell me this. You really want to work for the best owners. And
Right.
because he had done that, he had Lamar Hunt and
Right.
different owners over time. Joe Robbie at
Yeah.
Fort Lauderdale in
That's
the
right.
NASL, and so we had Ron Creighton, we had um, Mike Bazelon, and Peter, I forget his last name, but they were great owners, and it was a good franchise, um, and I think it could only go up, but I think in terms of the
Right.
leagues, I think every time there's as time goes on, the game improves, gets better. Certainly in Milwaukee at
Mm-hmm.
that time, and the league had quality. There were players in Milwaukee that played in the first year, didn't play in the second year, that I wish had played in the second year, that I remember today. You know, um,
Wow.
eh, I'll share them with you. One of them was Art Kramer. Artie Kramer. I
Oh,
wish I
absolutely.
could have kept him and held on to him, but he had an injury situation going on, and we already were plagued with
Oh,
injuries. So that became a telling factor. And the other one was Tim Tima. Tim Tima was a feisty defender, I'll tell you. And he had everything going for himself except the except except the red cards that he'd get. But under
wow.
control,
Okay.
under control, he was one of the better defenders around. So you could see defender. Certainly the MISL, I think, had a little bit higher standard in terms of play than at that time in the NPSL. But the NPSL was upcoming. You had that Canton team that
Right.
kept winning. You had
Yeah.
Chicago with
Yeah.
Potomac Headache. that
Wow.
was just tremendous. You had a lot of good stuff there. So, owners are important.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, this is how important owners are. After I left um, Milwaukee and had come out to the East Coast um, for family reasons, um, I took I had a couple college jobs. I had an offer as an assistant at Williams College,
Cool.
which was a good job. Williams College was a great little program, and I had a head coaching offer at RPI, which I took.
Right. Right.
Um, so I spent a few years doing that, and I got a phone call one day. Would you like to come to Toronto?
Right on.
You know, and I said, "What's going on in Toronto?" Well, the Toronto Shooting Stars,
Okay.
indoor franchise, the whole thing. Okay, let's see what the story is. And I wasn't going to go unless I had a guaranteed contract, because I'd learned by then that you're a professional
Mhm.
gypsy. You have to protect yourself. You're not going to go, and then there's no friends. So I had a guaranteed contract, and I went to Toronto, and we had a great group of most national team players. Paolo
Wow.
Ciccarelli was the goalkeeper. We had a good group and trained and did everything right, and then um, won our first game. Played at the Maple Leaf Gardens. At the time, it was still there. Um, Dr. Goldfinger was the owner, and on the roster was Maradona's brother, Lalo Maradona, his brother,
Wow.
who
Okay.
was on for a lot of money and was boycotting the team unless he was collecting his money. Something was going on.
Oh
The
man.
ownership had been embezzled prior to our arrival there
Oh
with
man.
these people, and the doctor panicked and decides to close the franchise
Dang.
in our and not pay. And so, there's a situation where ownership is expensive.
Right.
It
Right.
is important. And so when I left Toronto, um, you know I tried to recover. You try to recover your losses, but they were very smart. The doctor had done his LLC or whatever it is, the group,
Hmm.
not in Ontario, Canada, but out of some islands off the Caribbean. So you
Oh
couldn't
shoot.
really collect on your
Oh no.
guaranteed contract. So it was a mess. Um, and as opposed to Montreal, I went to Montreal and coached the Impact. I received a call and went up there because they had heard good things from Toronto. So I went to Montreal, and Joey Saputo, one of the most
Okay.
honorable owners,
Wow.
a
Wow.
big Italian family in Canada. Joey Saputo was one of the few. I was there for a few years, but never. I
Yeah.
mean, always honest and always paid your contract. Nothing like happened
Wow.
in
That's
Toronto. So one of the
right.
few times that ever happened. Um, so owners are important. There was another time
Yeah.
when in the night, and this was in the middle '90s, I received a phone call, and it was a new franchise starting in Mexico City, and
Hmm.
they wanted me to come down to interview for this job.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and I think my name had been given to them from Fernando Clavijo because he
Okay.
called me about it. So I
Okay.
went down and met with the owners in Mexico City. This was in the mid '90s when I was at still coaching at at the college at RPI,
Right.
and they wanted an indoor situation and all that there. The owners were Comex. Comex, Comex, is Compañías Mexico, which they handle. I mean, it's Mexican companies. They handle all of the paint all over Mexico. Everything that has paint, every wall, they own that. So
Wow.
yeah, it's all. So we met, and it was very, very interesting. What a story! They offered me the contract. I said I want to be paid in U.S. dollars, like I always
Right.
had. I kind of negotiated my own. Um, everything was set, okay, and I was coming back to the U.S. and they picked me up. They sent somebody from the federation to pick me up to take me to the airport the following morning. So two things happened. As we were driving, the taxi driver, he looked at me and he said, I said, "What's the matter?" And police was behind him. We're getting pulled over. And he said to me in Spanish, "Mordida." Mordida means we need to give a bite because they're pulling us over. They pulled him over and the police was there. And so I gave him some dollars, say, "Here, they'll let us go to the airport. I want to catch my flight." By the time I got to the airport, I said, "Okay, I'm going to go get a cup of coffee and get something." And I went to one of the Mexican McDonald's that they had there and to get a cup of coffee and something before I board. The lady did not know what to charge. I said, "It's a cup of coffee." She had no, everything. What is going on here? I said, "Well, the Mexican peso had crashed,
Oh,
devaluated. Boom. This
oh,
was right in the next morning that
oh,
happened. I got on
wow,
that flight and I came back to Saratoga Springs here in New York. And then I was in touch. They were in touch with me, the president of Comics and owner of the team. And my contract was vanished. So
wow,
that was that story. I never went there. I don't know if
wow.
they kept going because they couldn't do my contract, but I
Right, right.
believe that that team, they asked me, I said, "Okay, somebody else maybe can take it." And I had a player in Milwaukee that came to us from Illinois Thunder, who I knew was a very good player. His name was Jorge Espinosa, a
Okay.
Chilean defender that had come here
Right.
to the U.S. and played. Very good player, very good person. And I believe he went and took the job down there and see how it went up, but they didn't last too long.
Mm.
But you see, ownership is important,
Wow.
and
Yeah. No
you know,
kidding.
and contracts are important. If you're going to be in this business, um, you really are a professional gypsy. And if you want to set roots at some point after Montreal, the university at Albany had gone Division 1, and they offered me the contract.
Wow.
And so
Okay.
I came to the University at Albany in 2000 after that, and I stayed there
Okay.
for 11 years and set roots here in Albany.
Yeah.
You know,
Wow.
yeah,
And um, that was a 30-year coaching career, Johan. That is impressive. That is impressive. I mean, and
yeah,
so many stories and so many people and so many great personalities. You mentioned earlier about Ron Newman coaching and egos. You mentioned egos and how crazy is that? I mean, truly, when you're coaching professionally, there's so many egos. There's a management issue that you need to know how to manage people and you need to have that kind of touch on. Some people need to be managed one way, some another way, but that's a whole different story when you're coaching college kids in Albany for 11 years. How did that whole thing go? How did you appreciate that?
yeah. No, that's an excellent question, Greg, because when I look at it, you've got the professional arena. First of all, I've been blessed. I've been blessed that for 30 years, I made a full-time living at what I love to do. That is not something that's
Absolutely.
easy to do, or many people would want to do, could not do. So I've been very blessed. And
Right.
when I look at
Right.
coaching at the pros and coaching in college or youth, and there's huge differences. Um, Learning from what I've learned, and especially watching and studying and seeing different coaches, Ron Newman as prime example, is that at the pros, you are a manager of human beings. You're a manager of egos, personalities, some stronger than others, and your job there is to manage that
Right.
and to develop a system that will bring the best out of on most of them and create that chemistry. So good system and good management, and Ron had
Right.
that. You don't teach the game at
Right.
the pros, because if you need to
Right.
teach the pro how to kick a ball, he can't be there. He's not there. At the collegiate level,
Right.
you're more of a teacher of the game, and you are now going to teach the game,
Interesting.
of the game, because tactically they need to develop, and there's things that need to be taught, to the upcoming college player, or the youth upcoming player. Um, so you're a teacher of the game, and you're also in an environment where you are affecting the lives of young people. So
Hmm.
um, so
Hmm.
it's very different what you are professing, and as professionals, that's what we do. We profess unto them what we know. You're
Right.
affecting their lives,
Right.
and I I know that, like I said, at the age of 15, 17, to Renee and to Paul Wright, here's your college
Right.
scholarship. You take advantage of it. Um,
Right.
I know Renee did. I haven't
Yep.
seen Paul, but Paul's doing very well from what I hear.
Right.
And
Yeah.
Renee took advantage, got his degree and all that. I would always say to these kids, you're going to play, you're going to graduate. And what I did over 11 years, I developed an academic mentoring program, at the University of Albany in Division One, where all the players that I would recruit, um, needed to balance their lives as student athletes in three categories. They needed to balance their academics. They need to be in class and balance their academics, their athletics, because we
Right.
need them to be at practice,
Right.
um, and their social existence, because they're human beings. And if you balance all three, or you're going to be, if one of them is missing, you're either going to get sick, you're not going to
Right.
make it. You're going to get, if you don't balance if you don't have a social existence, you're going to be in trouble. But if you don't overcompensate on social existence, then you're not going to make it in from your first semester into your second semester. You're going to flunk
Right.
out.
Right.
So
Right.
I would have all my student athletes meet with me, every week, and we would go over time management,
Oh,
what needs
cool.
to be done during the week, what needs to
Cool.
be done the next week. I developed task management, which means what did you do yesterday? What's upcoming? What are you doing today?
Yeah.
And, where are the quizzes? What is the work that when are you going to do it? And we would have it all on paper, because
That's
of
great.
one thing I learned was, in our head, it's a dream, on paper, it's a plan. So we
That's
had
right.
everything on paper. And, we had probably, and I had recruited players here from all over the world, plus U.S. players, from Yugoslavia. They never spoke English. Had to pass a TOEFL test in order to be admitted into the school, and
Wow.
we had a GPA above 3.0 that led the country, and above,
Wow.
for over 10 years, and above the general, population of the university, as
Wow.
a team average. Um, so you affect the lives of people, and a lot of those players
That's
in
outstanding.
college moved on. Captains of mine moved on, and went back to their countries. I've been to their weddings. It's like you're on their team for life. My wife and I have been to Brazil. We've been to Bolivia. We've been
Oh,
to Greece for different weddings of team captains. We were
wow.
there when their firstborns were there. It's been a tremendous trip. But that is what you have in the difference between college and
Yeah.
professionals, and they're both exciting. And
Right.
I wouldn't do anything in a different way. Um, but I was very proud of the last those 11 years, because I learned a lot, and
Yeah.
how to help these student athletes, and to be able to play the game and graduate. You know,
Well, Johan, that was 15 years ago when you walked away from the responsibilities at Albany. What have you been doing? We got about 5 minutes left. What have you been doing for the last 15 years?
well, I said to my wife, I went there in 99, 2000, and it was 2011, 2012, and I retired from coaching. And my wife said, "Well, what are you going to do? You're going to get bored." And I said, "Well, I want to, use my business skills, and have start a small business. And she said, what would you like to do? I said, let me look around. And then I came back and said, I could have a business of car washes. No, it wasn't car washes. It was laundromats. And
There you go.
she looked at me, and I could tell something was wrong. And I said, well, laundromat, first of all, it's a cash cow. And second of all, you don't really have to be there. You can be doing other things. I could be coaching youth, but
Right.
the average owner is present 14 hours per week. And you make so much and this and that. And she said to me, oh my God, she said, look, they're in the worst parts of town. You're going to
Okay.
get in crime areas. You're going to have things break down. You're not a good fixer of anything mechanical. She was entirely right. So I said, okay. So kept looking around, and I said, I want to go into the wine business.
There you go.
Um, and she said, okay. She said, why? I said, well, it's a romantic business, wine,
Yep.
and
Yep.
you deal with a lot, and you can learn a lot. So I started learning about wines. I looked at wine businesses, and you know how if you want to have the best hamburger, you go where the best hamburger is made, and you go. Let's say you go to McDonald's and say, okay, in business, plagiarism is virtue. I want to make it exactly the way they do it. So you do a little bit of that. You look around and research and do your marketing research and move on. And we started the wine business. And guess what? People will drink whether they're employed, unemployed,
Oh,
sad,
right. Right.
happy,
That's right.
funeral,
Yeah.
weddings,
Right.
parties, weekends, NBA playoffs, Super Bowls, soccer playoffs. It doesn't matter. People will always drink,
Wow.
and and
Yeah.
so it is foolproof, and it went very well,
Good.
and it allowed me to retire after coaching because you know you don't become a you don't become extremely rich in soccer coaching. um, Probably today is better than it's been the last 30 years, so this helped a lot to have a business that gave you a good financial plan to retire. And then I sold the business. I sold well about a year ago. A friend of
Oh,
mine
good.
was ecstatic to buy it, and he bought it.
Wow.
And
Wow.
I sold the business, and it's still going on, and he's doing a great job. And I retired about a year ago.
Okay.
And
So Johan, that was Sand Creek Wine and Liquor.
that was Sand Creek Wine and Liquor. We had wines from all over the world, and we sold, and also spirits. We had all the spirits, everything
Wow.
from bourbons to tequila, you name it. Um, and
Wow.
it is different because it's in New York. It's protected. You don't sell
Right.
wines in grocery stores like you do
Right.
in
Right.
San Diego. So you have your own market, your own capsule market.
Right. Right.
And it went very well. And we are retired, and we have a place in San Diego. And we go January, February, and March to San Diego. And next time we're there,
Oh,
we're going to
nice.
get in touch, and we're going to have lunch together. And
Yep.
I'd like to invite you to
Yep.
lunch, or maybe to another one of
Absolutely.
those steaks that we had in
Nice.
in Minneapolis. Okay.
Yeah. Outstanding, Johan. What a career. What a period of time that you had, and I remember you so well, and it was interesting to me from where I was sitting. It was interesting to me when you left. I think Eric Geyer took over the position of assistant coach in San Diego after you left. But I appreciated all those years, just being able to follow you and your career. And I thought about you so many times over the years and wondered how you were doing and what you were doing. And I
Thank you.
had Renee. You mentioned Renee a couple of times. I had Renee on here a couple of weeks ago, and he gave me your telephone number. And I'm kind of thinking, Renee. I mean, you really need to ask Johan if it's cool if I call him. I mean, he's not going to know who I am. And he said, no, just call him, he'll be fine, he'll be good. And so I'm
Yeah.
glad I was able to reach out to you and get together with you and have you on today. Thank you so much for joining me today, Johan.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you for calling, and thank you for what you do. You offer an opportunity to keep a soccer community in touch with each other, which is invaluable. And not just myself, but
Nice.
I think everybody around appreciates you and appreciates that. And you've been around it for a long time, so we appreciate you. Thank you.
All right, buddy. Yeah, I'm looking forward to let's get together the next time you're in town. Okay.
I'll call you. All right.
All right. All right. Thanks. Have a great day.